I'll never forget the day I received the mysterious invitation to Ravenswood Manor. It was a chilly autumn evening when my phone rang, shrill and insistent, shattering the silence of the fading light. I hesitated for a moment before answering, expecting it to be one of my acquaintances or perhaps an automated call. Instead, a low, gravelly voice spoke on the other end, its tone devoid of any warmth or familiarity. "You're invited to an exclusive gathering at Ravenswood Manor," it said, the words dripping with an air of superiority. "The host requests your presence." I was taken aback by the sudden summons. The name Ravenswood Manor had long been etched in local lore as a place of dark legend and malevolent energy. I remembered hearing whispers about strange occurrences, unexplained noises, and sightings of ghostly apparitions. Many believed it to be cursed, a threshold between worlds where terrors beyond human comprehension seeped into reality. Despite my reservations, the voice on the phone seemed genuinely intent on inviting me, so I agreed to attend without further questions. A date was set, 3 weeks from that fateful evening when the mysterious call came. Days turned into weeks as anticipation built within me. I tried to brush off the unease growing in the pit of my stomach, attributing it to the rumors surrounding Ravenswood Manor. Yet, with each passing day, the sense of foreboding intensified, refusing to be ignored. On the appointed evening, dressed in my finest attire, I stood before the grand entrance of Ravenswood Manor. The mansion loomed above me, its towering spires piercing into the twilight sky like skeletal fingers. A chill ran down my spine as the massive wooden door swung open, inviting me inside. In that moment, I knew I was stepping into a realm where terrors lurked in every shadow, and the line between reality and madness blurred beyond recognition. As I stepped across the threshold into Ravenswood Manor, a wave of musty air enveloped me, heavy with the scent of decay and rot. The interior was dimly lit, with only flickering candles to illuminate the dark, ornate furnishings that seemed frozen in time. I couldn't help but feel like an intruder, as if I had disturbed a long-dormant world. A faint whisper echoed through the hallway, barely audible over the creaking of old wooden floorboards beneath my feet. "Welcome," it whispered, but the words were lost on me, drowned by the cacophony of doubts that swirled within my mind. My host awaited me in the grand foyer, tall and imposing, with eyes that seemed to bore into my very soul. His smile was warm and inviting, yet I sensed a malevolent intent lurking beneath its surface. He extended a hand, his fingers long and slender, adorned with rings that glinted like cold, dead stars in the dim light. "I am Mr. Edward Blackwood," he said, his voice low and resonant. "And you are?" His gaze locked onto mine, making my skin crawl as I felt myself becoming lost in its depths. I managed to stammer out a greeting, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. As I shook Mr. Blackwood's hand, a sudden chill ran down my spine. It was as if I had touched something cold and dark, something that seemed to seep into my very being. "Please," he said, his smile widening, "come in. We have much to discuss." And with that, he led me deeper into the heart of Ravenswood Manor, further into a realm where terrors lurked in every shadow. As I followed Mr. Blackwood through the winding corridors of Ravenswood Manor, my mind struggled to keep pace with the labyrinthine path that seemed to shift and twist like a living entity. We eventually emerged into a crisp autumn evening, the sky ablaze with hues of gold and crimson as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was alive with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the distant chirping of crickets, a stark contrast to the foreboding atmosphere that seemed to cling to every surface of the manor like a shroud. "Mister." Blackwood gestured for me to follow him as he led me across the overgrown lawn, its grasses whispering secrets in the fading light. The trees loomed above us, their branches tangled and twisted, like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. Every step seemed to creak beneath my feet, as if the very earth itself was protesting our presence. As we walked, I noticed that the air grew thick with an unseen presence, a heavy, oppressive weight that pressed down upon me, making it hard to breathe. It was as if the darkness itself was watching us, waiting for its moment to strike. Mr. Blackwood seemed oblivious to this feeling, his eyes fixed on some point in front of him as he led me deeper into the heart of the grounds. The silence was oppressive, punctuated only by the distant hooting of an owl and the rustling of leaves beneath our feet. And then, without warning, we stopped before a massive stone statue, its face twisted into a grotesque grimace that seemed to leer at me with malevolent intent. "This is my ancestor," Mr. Blackwood said, his voice low and proud. "Malachi Blackwood, the great and powerful." As I gazed upon the statue, I felt a shiver run down my spine. There was something about Malachi's face that seemed to stir a deep-seated fear within me, a primal warning that I should turn back while I still could. But it was too late. Mr. Blackwood had already turned away, his eyes fixed on some point in the distance. "Come," he said, his voice low and commanding. "We have much to discuss." As we walked deeper into the grounds, Mr. Blackwood led me to a small, secluded cottage that seemed out of place among the grandeur of Ravenswood Manor. The wooden door creaked as he pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior that was cluttered with dusty tomes and strange artifacts. "This is where I conduct my research," Mr. Blackwood said, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that made me feel like an intruder. "I am a scholar of the occult, and this cottage holds many secrets." As he gestured for me to enter, I couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. The air inside was thick with the scent of old books and something else, something sweet and decaying. Mr. Blackwood began to rummage through his bookshelves, pulling out volumes bound in black leather that seemed to absorb the light around them. "These are the works of my ancestors," he said, his voice filled with pride. "The secrets of the occult passed down through generations." As I watched him, a shiver ran down my spine. There was something about those books that seemed to radiate an otherworldly energy, as if they held the key to unlocking secrets that were meant to remain hidden. Mr. Blackwood handed me one of the volumes, its pages crackling with age. "This is a rare copy of De Vermis Mysteriis," he said, his eyes glinting with excitement. "A treatise on the occult by the great Hieronymus Bosch." As I opened the book, the words seemed to leap off the page, filling me with a sense of unease. The illustrations depicted twisted creatures and grotesque rituals, each one more disturbing than the last. I felt like I was reading something that was meant for my eyes alone, something that was hidden from the world by those who dared to tread the path of the occult. "Mr. Blackwood watched me with an intensity that made me feel like he could see right through me. "Do you see?" he asked, his voice low and hypnotic. "The secrets of the universe are hidden in plain sight, waiting for one with the courage to uncover them." And with that, he leaned in close, his breath whispering against my ear. "I think I can show you something even more remarkable." As the clock struck midnight, I found myself drawn to Ravenswood Manor once more. Mr. Blackwood had been nowhere to be seen, but a mysterious note on my desk seemed to beckon me to follow its instructions. "Meet me in the East Wing," it read. "Come alone." My heart racing with anticipation and fear, I made my way through the darkened corridors, the only sound the creaking of old wooden floorboards beneath my feet. The East Wing was shrouded in an eerie silence, as if the very walls were listening to my every step. I pushed open the door at the end of the hall, and a chill ran down my spine as I stepped into the room. It was a grand ballroom, once opulent and full of life, now deserted and still. The air was heavy with dust, and cobwebs clung to the chandeliers like macabre tapestries. And then I saw her. A figure in white standing at the far end of the room, her back to me. She seemed to be waiting for something or someone. As I watched, she slowly turned to face me. Her eyes were black as coal, and they drew me in with an otherworldly power. "Welcome," she said, her voice like a sigh on the wind. "I have been waiting for you." I felt a shiver run down my spine as she began to move towards me, her movements fluid and almost supernatural. Suddenly, the room was bathed in a faint, flickering light, as if candles had appeared out of nowhere. The figure reached out a hand and touched my face, and I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body. "You have seen things that you cannot unsee," she said, her eyes glinting with a mischievous spark. "But do not worry, you will see more." And with that, she pulled me into the shadows, and everything went black. As I emerged from the darkness, I found myself in a long, narrow corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. The figure in white stood at the far end, watching me with an unblinking gaze. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "You should not have come here," she said, her voice low and menacing. I felt a chill run down my spine as she reached out and touched my arm. It was cold and clammy like the skin of a dead fish. I tried to pull away, but she held me fast. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. I was alone in the corridor, surrounded by an oppressive silence. And then I heard it. A faint whispering in my ear, a soft voice that seemed to be saying something over and over again. "Get out while you still can." The words echoed through my mind, growing louder and more insistent. I tried to run, but my feet felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the end of the corridor, watching me with cold, dead eyes. It was a woman in a long, white dress, her face twisted into a grotesque grimace. She began to walk towards me, her movements stiff and jerky. I tried to scream, but my voice was frozen in my throat. The woman reached out a bony hand and touched my face, and everything went black. I awoke to find myself back in the dimly lit study, surrounded by dusty tomes and yellowed parchment. The figure in white stood before me, a look of expectation on her face. "The woman in white," she said, her voice dripping with an otherworldly sweetness. "She is an old friend." I tried to speak, but my words caught in my throat. She gestured to a nearby table, where a large, leather-bound book lay open. The pages were filled with strange symbols and arcane script. "This is the journal of Malachi Blackwood," she said, her eyes glinting with excitement. "A key to unlocking the secrets of Ravenswood Manor." I felt a surge of curiosity as I approached the table. The figure in white handed me a quill pen, and I began to decipher the ancient text. At first, it seemed like gibberish, a jumbled collection of symbols and words that made no sense to me. But as I continued to study the journal, I started to notice patterns and connections between the pages. The writing seemed to be pointing to a hidden truth, one that lay at the heart of Ravenswood Manor. I spent hours poring over the text, my mind racing with possibilities. And then it hit me, a phrase that stood out from the rest, a single sentence that seemed to hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the manor. "The answer lies in the attic," I read aloud, my voice shaking with excitement. The figure in white smiled, her eyes gleaming with approval. "Well done," she said. "You have taken the first step on a journey that will change your life forever." As I ventured into the attic, a chill ran down my spine. The air was thick with dust and the stench of decay. I had always been warned not to go up here, but something about the figure in white's words had drawn me in. She had said that the answer lay hidden within these very walls. I began to search through old trunks and boxes, my fingers running over the intricate carvings on the furniture. And then I saw it, a small, leather-bound book with a strange symbol embossed on the cover. It was old and worn, as if it had been hidden away for decades. I opened the book, and a musty smell wafted up. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, detailing a history of Ravenswood Manor that made my blood run cold. It was a story of dark rituals and human sacrifices, of curses and hexes. I felt like I had stumbled into something that was meant to remain hidden. The figure in white appeared beside me, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "This is the history of Ravenswood Manor," she said, her voice low and hypnotic. "A story of darkness and despair." As I read on, I began to realize that I had unknowingly inherited a dark legacy, one that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The figure in white reached out and took the book from me, her touch cold and clammy. "You must be warned," she said, her voice dripping with an air of menace. "The secrets contained within these pages are not to be trifled with." And with that, she vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the attic with the weight of a dark history hanging over my head like a shroud. As I stood in the attic, the air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. The figure in white reappeared before me, her eyes blazing with an intense light. "The veil between worlds is thinning," she said, her voice like a whispered secret. "The boundary between reality and the unknown is growing weaker." I felt a shiver run down my spine as she reached out and took my hand. Together, we walked to the edge of the attic, where a large, ornate mirror hung on the wall. The figure in white pressed her finger against the glass, and suddenly the mirror seemed to ripple and distort. A dark, swirling vortex appeared before us, like a portal to another dimension. "This is the threshold," she said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "The doorway to other worlds." I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I gazed into the abyss. The figure in white squeezed my hand, and together we stepped forward into the unknown. As we crossed the threshold, the world around us dissolved into chaos. Colors swirled and merged, sounds echoed and faded, and the very fabric of reality seemed to unravel. We were no longer in Ravenswood Manor. We were somewhere else entirely, a realm beyond mortal comprehension. And yet, I felt no fear. Instead, I felt a sense of wonder, a thrill of excitement at the unknown possibilities that lay before us. The figure in white smiled, her eyes shining with an otherworldly light. "Welcome to the multiverse," she said, her voice echoing through eternity. I stepped forward into the swirling vortex and felt my senses reel. The world around me was a madhouse of colors and sounds, like nothing I had ever experienced before. And then, suddenly, we emerged into a realm that made my blood run cold. A forest of twisted, nightmarish trees stretched out before us, their branches grasping towards the sky like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with an unholy presence, a feeling of malevolent energy that seemed to seep into every pore of my being. I felt the figure in white's hand tighten around mine, her grip like a vice, as she pulled me deeper into the heart of the forest. And then, we saw it, a creature unlike anything I had ever imagined. Its body was a mass of writhing, pulsing tendrils, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly green fire. It moved towards us with a slow, deliberate pace, its very presence seeming to fill me with a creeping sense of dread. The figure in white spoke no word, but her grip on my hand tightened, and I knew that she was trying to convey some message, some warning. But what? And then the creature reached out with one of its tendrils and touched my face. A searing pain shot through my brain, like 1,000 knives stabbing at once. I felt myself being pulled into a realm of pure terror, a world where sanity was just a distant memory. The last thing I saw was the figure in white's face, her eyes wide with horror as she mouthed a single word, "Run." I stumbled forward, blindly trying to escape the creature's grasp. The figure in white was nowhere to be seen, but I could hear her voice echoing in my mind, urging me on. I ran through the twisted forest, my heart pounding in my chest. Every step felt like a betrayal, as if the very ground beneath my feet was conspiring against me. I stumbled and fell, skinning my knee on the rough bark of a tree. As I looked up, I saw the creature looming over me, its tendrils reaching out to ensnare me. But then a figure appeared from nowhere, striking at the creature with a long, silver dagger. The blade bit deep into its twisted flesh, and it recoiled in pain. The figure turned to me, their face obscured by a hood. "Come," they said, offering me their hand. I took it, and together we fled the forest, pursued by the creature's angry wails. We burst through the manor's front door, slamming it shut behind us. I leaned against it, panting, as the figure turned to me. Their hood fell away, revealing a face that was both familiar and yet utterly alien. "You are one of them," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The stranger smiled, their eyes glinting with amusement. "No," they said, "I am not, but I can help you escape this place." And with that, they reached out and took my hand, leading me down a dark corridor, towards the freedom of the outside world. As I walked with the stranger through the dark corridors of Ravenswood Manor, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being herded towards some unknown fate. The air was thick with an unrelenting darkness, like a living entity that pressed in on us from all sides. Every step felt like a betrayal, as if the very walls were closing in on me. I tried to ask questions, but the stranger's responses were enigmatic and cryptic, leaving me with more doubts than answers. We finally reached a large, iron door, adorned with ancient symbols of protection and warding. The stranger produced a key from their cloak and unlocked the door, revealing a narrow stairway that plunged into the depths of the manor. "This is our only hope," they said, their voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, feeling a sense of trepidation wash over me. But the stranger's grip on my arm was firm, and they pulled me down the stairs, leading me deeper into the heart of darkness. As we descended, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist around us like living things. I felt myself being drawn into a realm where the very fabric of reality was torn asunder, leaving only an abyss of unrelenting darkness in its wake. And yet, I could not look away. The stranger's words echoed in my mind. "This is our only hope." But what did they mean? What lay at the bottom of this abyss, and would we ever find our way back to the world above?